And I think we should end this episode on a high,
Yes.
and we say bye-bye. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Remind podcast. My name's David Masterton, and I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Ashley Morland. And
Hey, Dave. Hey, everyone.
today's going to be about what we don't process, we project.
Yes,
That's an interesting one.
it is in a big way. And I was recently exposed to an analogy. And I loved it because it was so crazy. We were preparing to record this. This has been on our list to record for quite a while, and
quite
it's
a while.
taken us a bit to get here because I think it's something that needs a little bit of a build up. And if you haven't watched our episode previous to this one, watch it because I think it'll give you a lot of context. However, the analogy that I heard recently was like a dipstick. If you put a dipstick into the oil part of a car and then pull it out, what color is that dipstick? And you want to have nice clean oil, you want the car to be running well. But if you put the dipstick in and you pull it out and it's black and it's gunky and all of that sort of stuff, that sort of represents that, I don't want to say darkness within you, but that unprocessed, old, dirty emotion. And when we talk about unprocessed emotion, when we talk about what you don't process, you project, ultimately, projection is how is the car running? Is it spluttering? Is it slow? Is it not starting well? And when we look at that in our own lives, how is that showing up in our own lives? Are we reactive? Are we impatient? Are we intolerant? Are we not sleeping well? Are we not looking after our health and well-being? All of those things can be the output of an inner world that's carrying those old, dirty, unprocessed emotions from the things of our past.
Which is quite interesting. We'll take this analogy along for all the mechanics that are listening and loving all of this. Comment below. But when you service your car, there's no like preventative maintenance on a vehicle. There's no benefit. It's not like you're changing the look of the headlight. It's not like you're actually cleaning it or doing all of these things. You're actually just maintaining something that you never really see, but if you don't do it, the car will die. If you never change the oil, at one time the engine's just going to go kaput, and then either a piston will skyrocket or it'll seize up into just one big lump of metal.
Hello,
Um,
burnout.
what's that?
Hello, burnout.
Burnout. Come on, drifter.
No, I was talking about the human burnout. Like, hello, human
I put it.
experiencing burnout.
My God, this analogy's got so much tread on it. The similarities are exhausting.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things. It's sort of like, well, I mean, I take it to a shop, or and I pay someone to do something that it looks, unless they wash it, identical to when I took it in.
Mm.
I wouldn't know unless I actually watched them do it. Did they do anything? So part of it's sort of like, well, do I have to service it every year? Do I have to service it every 6 months? Do I have to service it every 9 months? Because is that people just tell me I need to do that because they just want my money? And it could be the same with self-care. It's sort of
Yes.
like, I can only do this. I'll look after myself once I've won the lottery. I'll look after myself once I've got through this project. I'll look
Yeah.
after myself when I don't feel so tired. I'll look after myself when,
Mhm.
and that's funny coming from someone with red eyes today, that there's never going to be that ideal time to work on yourself
Yeah.
unless you're pushed to the wall.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So it's so easy to put your head in the sand and not take care of your car, not do the regular
Mm,
services, not do any of that maintenance until
mm,
you're broken down on the side of the highway and you've got no choice. And how often do we run ourselves into the ground like that, where we turn a blind eye to that weird feeling in our
Mm.
body, where we turn a blind eye to the more fatigue than normal, where we turn a blind eye to all of the warning signs and the warning signals, and the engine light could be flashing, and you go, just that bit further, just that bit further, just that bit further. I've just got to make it to there. And
Mm.
you crash and burn. I
Yeah,
think,
or you just get some electrical tape, put it over the dash, and engine light disappear,
yes, most
right?
people, the electrical tape is caffeine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like
I'm just running
it's
off 7 coffees.
yep.
Even though your body is screaming at you, all those warning signs are there saying, warning, 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 hey, the oil needs to be changed. And I love that. Isn't that powerful? Wow, I did not
Mm.
anticipate that analogy to give us the
Well,
first.
you're speaking to a car guy deep down, so I'm always going to love those similarities. But
Yeah.
I think it's important, and reason I'm saying this now is because I am quite tired because I've been burning the two ends of the candle
Mhm.
recently. That seasonally it's okay. If there's like a little bit of time that you sort of do it, and you know,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to come back to it, and you actually have come back to it, and you have the ability to sort of stop and prioritize all of that, dipping in and out, or we'll say maybe leaving the service an extra month or two once over, a 5-year period isn't going to bust it.
No.
It's when you're doing it consistently because you're running away from it, or you
Mm.
don't want to do it, or there's no pattern, or you have no intention, or you just there's something blocking you from actually doing it, because otherwise it will catch up with you.
Totally.
What will end up happening is something will manifest, but it's not just going to be that one oil change or that one thing. It's going to be a catastrophic breakdown, because that one thing
Mhm.
will lead you into having zero capacity, and you do, or you say,
Yeah.
or you act out, or you do something that you just absolutely regret.
Yeah, totally. And that moment often comes in a moment of crisis, and it might be a
Mm,
health crisis. How many people do you see who finally start to take their health seriously and change their priorities in their lives and all this sort of stuff? I just spoke to a colleague of mine recently who was diagnosed with breast cancer. And this
wow.
person had absolutely gone above and beyond in her career. She held and carried everyone else. She was a yes person. And the really cool questions that I got to ask when we were chatting was like, how does this change the way that you navigate work now? What are your priorities? What's different for you? How do you change the way you show up? How do you change your relationships with people, both inside and outside of the workplace? And it was such an enriching conversation because you could
Mm,
see that paradigm shift where the health crisis was such a wake up call that you've gone, nah, I can't live like that. And
mm,
so whether it's a health crisis, a mental health crisis. For me, my big moment, I've said it many times on the show, was getting to a point where I've literally reached, I can't do this anymore. I'm either
mm,
dying, like I either have to no longer be on this planet, or I need to have a drastic shift so that my experience of being on this planet is completely different. So
yeah.
that crisis moment, ignoring all of the servicing and the maintenance and everything else.
Mm,
Having said that, sometimes I'm wondering how I can continue this with the car analogy, but I'm just going to stick to trauma. Sometimes it's not about maintenance. Sometimes maybe you have done great with your maintenance.
mm,
However, you experience something outside of you, maybe another car crashes into you in your world, and that is a crisis moment. And that's something like a traumatic experience in your life. That's where your PTSD stuff comes about. That's when something so massive has happened that in that moment you've experienced such big emotion that now sits unprocessed within you. If you don't process the emotions attached to that event or that trauma, it is going to continue to be projected through your outward expressions. It might be through OCD, it might be through panic attacks, it might be through the way that you react to certain behaviors or certain sounds or smells. If you don't process the emotion, you will continue to project it in the experience of your everyday life.
mm. And to be fair, there's a lot. How many people were learning how to do this 10 years ago? Very, very little, right? So
Yeah,
we're just talking about the awareness is coming through now, the understanding's coming through now, the tools are coming through now.
totally.
So it's something that is happening now. So up until now, a lot of people in this boat. It's not like it's sort of like you're doing it wrong. No, you've got a catalyst. So
Yeah, and you
most of
did
the
it
people,
right for society at the time, honestly.
how is it?
Imagine trying to exist in this way of being or state of doing life that was such a stark contrast to everyone and everything else. This is
Mm.
becoming more and more and more mainstream now.
And I'm sure there were people back in the 70s and the 60s that were
They were
talking
called
about,
probably called hippies.
and they'd be hugging the trees, tree hugging
Mm,
hippies, right? And you think about now, grounding, what's the best way to ground? Stick your feet on the ground, put your hands on the tree. There's something to it, right? But back then it was sort of kooky because, they were on all their medicinal herbs and stuff like
yeah,
that. And don't get me started on plant medicine. But it's we're all learning, and so it's having that ability to sort of step into that sort of, I've never done this before. Do the people around me understand this? Will they judge me if I do this? Or is it easier to stick my head in the sand or get the tape out and cover the engine light on the dash, ignore it, and do what everyone else around me is sort of doing? Is I'll worry about it when it goes kaput or kasplat.
yeah. Totally. And isn't it interesting? I see this in relationships a lot. But before I get to that, I'll give another example. One day, I had to take my kids to the doctors, and their dad, my ex husband, their dad came with us,
Mm-hmm.
and my daughter came home with me, and my son chose to go in the car with his dad, who then dropped him at my house. And before they left, they went and he ordered a coffee, and I think my son got a drink, whatever it was. But while they were waiting for them to make the coffee, my son bumped into his dad just by accident. Just, I don't know, uncoordinated, bumped into his dad.
Like
And
off to the side kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
he just kind of tripped a little bit, fell into his dad, bumped him.
Was he
And
holding the coffee at the time?
no, they were
No.
just standing
Okay.
there waiting for the coffee. But his
Gotcha.
dad erupted and got quite angry. And when I was talking to my son about it, he was quite upset. And when I was
Gotcha.
talking to my son about it, he was struggling to make sense of that because he had really taken on that he did the wrong thing and he was bad and he was naughty and he shouldn't have bumped into his dad. And I
Right.
ended up getting some water bottles. Guys, you do this. It's such a powerful visual demonstration for your kids. If anything like this ever happens, get a water bottle, fill it with water, and say, if I bump into that water bottle, what comes out of it? Water.
Right.
If I fill that water bottle now with juice or with coffee or with something else and I bump into that water bottle, what's going to come out of it? Whatever's inside it. So if it's got coffee inside it, coffee's going to come out. If it's got juice inside it, juice is going to come out. And what I said to my son was, it wasn't you bumping into dad that made him angry. That anger already existed inside of him.
It's
If
what
you
came out of him, as opposed to
Exactly.
an oopsie daisy.
That's what came out of him. So that was
Yeah.
a projection of unprocessed emotion that was being held inside of him. That in that moment, when my son was just the trigger, he was the stimulus that bumped him enough for it to come out.
Mm.
And so the really powerful lesson for my son in this was that he wasn't bad. He did something that brought anger that already existed in his dad that's been unprocessed out to the surface. And his dad's not a bad dad. His dad's an amazing dad.
Mm.
It's that he has unprocessed emotion relevant to things that have nothing to do with my son, nothing to do with our life in that moment. It's things from his past experiences and his childhood and even intergenerational stuff.
Mm.
So it was such a powerful demonstration for my son to be able to see that if dad had processed all of that emotion and he was full of love, when he had have bumped into him, what would have come out? Love would have come out, gone, oh, it's okay, mate, you're right,
Mm.
instead of anger. And so I love that that's such a powerful visual demonstration of how this unprocessed emotion is projected into our daily life. So when you think about how do you react to your kids? How do you react to certain situations? What comes out of you? Judgments or thoughts or whatever it might be, that points to an unprocessed emotion within you.
mm. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about the transition from going from I'm unhappy with what's going on in the world at the moment,
Mhm.
and gee, it'd be a lot easier if all the wars stopped, if I got given the raise I deserved,
Yeah.
if I was valued in my relationship, if the and it goes on. And how do we get from, because our projections, god damn, they look so real,
They are
and
real.
but
They are real.
but they look so real as it's someone else's issue,
Ah, right. So they
right?
look so justified.
It is just, but it's not me,
Yes, it's
right?
so justified.
That is the realness. It's sort of like, this is not a projection. That person is being invalidating, an
Yeah,
idiot,
yeah,
unreasonable, intolerable,
yeah.
whatever it is, right?
Totally. So in that situation, it would have been protecting the unprocessed emotion would have looked like if you hadn't have bumped into me, then I wouldn't have had that anger. So it externalizes the responsibility of the anger to the other person.
Yeah, but let's look on a broader scale, right?
Yeah.
How do we start to look at changing from this is a projection to someone simply being an idiot that needs a boundary being put in?
Mhm.
Because I mean, when I first started, it would have. I was looking at it going, it's you guys, it's not me,
Yeah.
right? And so people are now starting to learn. Well, you got to have self love. You got to put in healthy boundaries. You got to do your healing. There's projection.
Mhm.
Okay, well, the way you're experiencing it as a person looking out and seeing a projection versus something that someone's doing that you need to set a boundary on, where do we start? How do people start to sort of go, okay, oh, this is a projection? And I have my own views, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts on how people can start to really look at the differences there.
Oh, I love that question. And the first step always comes back to self-awareness. And the thing with self-awareness is in order to have awareness of self, you need to have integration. And when I talk about
Mm,
integration, this is going to get pretty deep and pretty complex. So bear with me. But integration is integration of mind, body, and spirit, which means my soul is safely inhabited in my body. We're connected, we're integrated, right?
mm,
Now, when it comes to mental activity is happening out here. So if I am thinking all this mental activity and thinking about the what if and thinking about the time they said that and thinking about this and thinking about that, I cannot simultaneously be out there and in here. So that's the first thing. If I want to have awareness of what's in here, I need to be in here. I need to bring my mind, my soul, I need to
mm,
bring my awareness and my attention back into my body. And every time it tries to escape back out there, I've got to bring it back. I've got to bring it back. I've got to bring it back. And so that would be honestly my first step is always that awareness of self, because
mm.
otherwise all we're doing is we're personifying or over identifying with thought, with mental activity that's not really us.
Yeah,
And
and but would you say that people start there?
100% I would, because
Because
if you're not in your body, and so
yeah,
I don't know where it is in our podcast, but go and have a look. We've got a 5-minute body awareness activity.
oh
Start
yes, yeah,
there, because I'm going to upload another one as well, but start there, because if you're not present in your body, you are disconnected from your sense of self. So
mm,
even before we ask the question, what is this bringing up for me? You can't possibly answer that. You can't possibly turn towards it when you're only existing out here. So the
mm,
first step always is start practicing that presence in your body, the awareness of your body. Because even before we start getting to any of the other questions or anything, we can't answer them well unless we're in our body and we know where we are relative to everything else.
Mm. Yeah, well, absolutely, that's vital. And I guess for some reason, I keep on coming back to someone just starting off in this area,
Yeah.
and someone just sort of going, "How do I, if I am projecting out, how do I know it's projecting?" And then, well, if I'm projecting out everything, then how does that then tend to go too far? And then suddenly you've got an excuse for like anyone who does something bad to you, you go, "Oh, it must be me." But
No, well,
that's
and
that's
this is the thing, because discernment has to come into this, but
correct.
discernment has to start with self-awareness.
Absolutely.
If you don't have self-awareness, you can't even tell the difference between something that feels aligned for you,
Hmm.
something that feels safe for you, versus something that's a trauma response that's or a habit or a pattern.
Mm,
And
mm,
so discernment is a really important aspect in understanding projection versus what's mine and what's yours, and what am I feeling, what am I intuiting here. But I would say one of the most profound parts of that is, first of all, be in your body, practice being in your body. And most of our listeners, I would honestly suggest, most of our listeners rarely are present in their body. It's human condition. If we are busy, if we are always go go
mm,
go, if we are an overthinker, an overanalyzer, if we are always existing out in the mental space and focused and distracted by what we're doing and what we're thinking, we're not being, and we need to
mm.
be first.
Yeah. Well, our society has celebrated our biggest asset in the human body being the brain,
Yes.
right? It's like everyone's got a heart. They kind of do the same. They all do the same thing. But gee, you're smart. Gee, that person's smart. Gee, that person can remember things.
Mhm.
So where I'm picking that for me, when it has come to how have I found the difference between what I'm projecting versus something that I'm not necessarily projecting, it comes down to themes.
Mhm.
I'm going to come back to your favorite analogy of driving in a car. And let's say it's at night and I'm driving around with blue headlights. And everything I see in front of me is, guess what? Blue.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm projecting that out. So I'm seeing everything's blue. It's not the fact that everything is blue in front of me,
Yeah.
but it's blue. And so if I go, for God's sake, will you people stop being blue? Uh, well, mate, it's your headlights. However, if it's something where you're driving around and there is a blue person walking around, first check on them, see if they're okay, check if they're not a Smurf. But then you know, okay, that is something that is sort of outside of a theme, right? And yes, I know we're using a little bit more logic here, but we're going back to this sort of when you're starting to learn the discernment and the feeling in your body, is this for me? Is this not for me? Alignment, all of that. It
Mhm.
starts with I'm going to have to use my brain a bit to kind of tap into or quieten it down to get into that. And so a big one for me is themes. Your projection is everywhere. And
Absolutely.
and it is
Glasses. It's the lens through which you see the world. So imagine all of those unprocessed emotions. You know, when you go to the optometrist
hmm.
and they put the different lenses in and it changes what you see
Oh,
in front of you?
God, people look sexy when that happens. Absolutely.
So it's when, if we have unprocessed emotion that's stored in our body and in our unconscious mind, it literally is like the optometrist of the world
Mm,
putting these different lenses in front of our eyes. So all we see is the projection of our pain. And
mhm,
so if someone has had their heart broken and they look around and they've got the eyes of heartbreak, the lens of heartbreak in their worldly eyes, then all they're going to see is people being hurt. They're going to see
mm.
heartbreak everywhere. They're going to see people that who are not worthy of trust. They're going to see all these things that justify their lens.
Oh, I love where this is going.
Mm.
Let's pick two lenses, shall we? Right? I'm gonna go I'm gonna say two big ones for me, and we can
Yep.
explore this And then people can then try and sort of get an idea of, oh, okay, if I'm seeing this, maybe it's that. Number one, I'm not worthy. Okay,
Mhm.
lens. I'm going to say that's a fairly common one.
Yep.
And maybe number two, it's not fair.
Mhm.
There's injustice. Now let's talk about, what does I am not worthy look like as a lens? How do we see it in our life?
Oh, how does that play out? How does that look? It
Just
might
just
be
so,
not
mhm.
asking for help,
Yep,
seeing that no one's there for us.
yep.
It might be not putting our hand up for a promotion at work.
Not asking for help.
Yeah, absolutely. It might oh my
It's
gosh,
it's
this is so
it's
big.
it's like,
Not receiving gifts well, not taking
yep,
compliments. It might
not
be
not
rejecting or pushing aside those compliments.
not yeah, as you, I was just about to say exactly what you said, not accepting compliments, like having a reaction when someone actually sort of says, "Hey, you look nice today," and you go, "I don't believe you," or you want to fluff it off, or you use humor or
Yeah,
something
you
like that.
brush it off, totally.
Um, or it's sort of like you feel comfortable when you're not the center of attention. Now, you don't need to be the center of attention, but there are some times in your life where it's okay to be. Like, if people want to sing you happy birthday and buy you a cake, that's fine. It doesn't mean you don't want to be up on stage with 1,000 people all clapping and applauding that you've reached
And if
another
you
year in
want
your
that,
life.
that's fine too.
Absolutely. But someone who's not worthy would never want to have that.
Yes.
They would rather be in the crowd.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so what emotions would lead to the belief that I'm not worthy?
Mm.
Emotions of hurt, emotions of sadness, emotions of anger, emotions of abandonment, grief. All of those emotions have to be felt first before we draw the conclusion that I'm not worthy. And so I'm not worthy is simply the lens that we put on. The optometrist of the world has come in and gone, boop, I'm not worthy lens. And now
Mm.
I'm going to look at the world through this I'm not worthy lens. But that lens is the projection of the unprocessed emotion that sits within us. And so
And
it's all that sadness, the hurt, the grief,
yeah.
the shame.
And how to get there, and I'm just we're talking hypotheticals here, but
Mhm,
let's just say you had an upbringing where you were too loud, you needed to quieten down,
mhm,
where you had an upbringing where you struggled with education or social norms,
mhm.
and during that time people sort of saying, you better start sharpening up, or you're gonna end up being nothing.
Yeah,
Or, and these people had the best, well, sometimes will have the best, sometimes not have the best intentions,
yeah.
but it would have
Or
come
or
through
or
very
the
reasonable ways.
yes, the way that people relate with and to others. You have big emotions. What are some of the ways that would result in I'm not important or I'm not worthy or I'm not loved or whatever those belief systems might be? I'm holding my fingers up. If you're listening to this on the podcast, maybe go and jump on YouTube and so you can see this play out.
And
But
it's the index fingers, not the middle fingers, so
it's the
it's
index
okay.
fingers.
It's okay, guys.
So what think about our early life experiences. We cry, we scream, we have these big emotions. What are
Mm,
some possible outcomes of the parent? What are the possible ways they could deal with that? Stop it. Shh. Try and
mm.
push it down. Now, all of those responses are I'm still alone and I still have my big feelings. Now I just have to have them quieter. I
Yeah,
just have to have them myself, right? So that's an
yeah.
unprocessed emotion. What it could be it could be a distraction. Oh, come on. You don't have to feel that way. Come and have a piece of cake. Come and have a lolly.
Mm.
That could be a distraction. It could be abandonment where someone goes, you sit in the naughty corner. You go and have time out because I don't know how to deal with this right now. And the only way I know how to make you stop is to separate myself from you.
Well,
And then
let me tell you a story as to why this emotion's unreasonable, because back in my day, dot, dot, dot,
exactly,
dot, 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 dot.
explaining and justifying and trying to excuse or trying to change their mind.
Or
All of those
actually,
things.
and here's another one, right? Having the most loving parent who is just absolutely heartbroken that they can't help you and they can't understand, and then they become emotional about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And
So then
it's all
you
like,
have to come and carry them. You have to
and
come
then
and
you suddenly have to go, it's okay, it's okay, it's
yes,
okay.
exactly. So
Yeah.
all of these things are every single time that happened, there's unprocessed emotion. There's unprocessed emotion. There's unprocessed emotion. You were never taught, what do I do with this unprocessed emotion? And so that
Mm,
feeds in to this lens on the world of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I can't do anything right, I don't deserve love. All of these things. And you can see the fruits of that in your life. So, how
mm,
different would your life be? What emotions do you think you would feel, hypothetically, if you
mm,
were feeling all those big things as a child and someone, caregiver, someone came and were able to be with you? Go, I'm here. I've got
mm.
you. You're safe. Everything's okay. I've got you. I'm here.
Yeah, what you're
They
feeling
didn't try and
is,
fix it. So,
yeah,
what emotions might you feel?
cared for, connection,
Cared for. I matter. I deserve their time. I'm worthy of their love. I'm safe.
regulated. Well, you're not suppressing whatever's going on, which
No,
is because,
you're processing it.
yeah,
And does it matter if what you're feeling is rational?
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's a
Does it
feeling.
matter if what you're feeling is fair? It doesn't matter. It's
Mm,
just you're feeling an emotion. That's the human experience. And you've had someone else come and share their regulation with you. That's co regulation. We're going to have to do
mm,
a whole other episode on this, Dave, because
absolutely.
when it comes, when we talk about unprocessed emotion, that's the unprocessed emotion is every single time you felt something and you were alone in your feeling and you couldn't make sense of it and you couldn't bring regulation, you couldn't let it out, you couldn't
Mm,
process it. Your only option was to suppress it, hold on to it, or hide it.
yep,
And so that
absolutely.
becomes the way that you move through the world. It becomes the things you react to, the things that
Mm,
hurt your feelings, the things that trigger you, the things that finish this sentence. It hurts me when. It hurts me when they don't do this or they say that or they
mm,
look at me like that or whatever. When you start to process that old emotion from the past and rewrite those stories, your whole lens of the world completely changes.
mm.
So, going back to the question you asked before around how would someone see the world if they had
It, it,
that lens? So
exactly.
now, if I had a lens, I've gone to my world optometrist and they've put a
Hmm.
lens in me of going, I am so worthy of love. I'm worthy of support. What does
Guys,
that look like?
if you're not on YouTube, you need to be
You
seeing
need
Ash
it's so
say
worth
that
it. And while you're there, click the
with
subscribe button.
and if you don't like this one, then I mean, this is just great. Ash and her lenses, they're more like
These
binoculars.
lenses. I've been to the world optometrist, guys, and I've got the world lens of I'm
Mm,
worthy of love and I deserve good things and I'm a good person. So,
yep.
what might that look like? How might that play out in my life?
Well, because you'll be looking for that, and when someone does come up to you and sort of say you're not worth a piece of crap, or you can't do this without me, or whatever it is, they then become an exception. You know, they're going, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Because you're
well,
not, and it doesn't hurt you because you're not in agreement with what they're saying. The only
no.
things that can hurt you are the things that deep down you're in agreement with.
And
So,
you generally sort of look at that person and go, well, okay, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. But how about you go do your thing, and I'm just going to go do my thing.
basically,
Off
so
you go.
I've got my big lenses on. Give me a
Oh,
compliment.
love it. Your glasses look amazing.
Oh my
Your
gosh,
lenses are great.
thank you so much.
Have you done your nails today?
I haven't, but thank you for
They look
noticing.
stunning.
Oh, thank you so much.
And
See how I can receive that instead of just being awkward and uncomfortable because at an
mm,
embodied level, the I don't have that old shame or that old guilt or that old anger or hurt or fear or sadness or I don't have that at a cellular level that is causing the projection that brings me into agreement with those
okay,
with
yeah.
those lines.
Let's just do and just we'll just tickle this one a little bit. It's unfair. It's unjust.
Oh,
And you get angry about it. You want to see justice. You want
mm.
to see someone who's done something wrong, and you want to see them belted in the head, and all of these kind of things, right? Where do you reckon that's come from?
Ooh, hypotheticals?
Just hypotheticals. Like there's you know,
So before the emotions I
I'm
would put to it were more like sadness and grief and hurt and those kinds of things. This one,
this is like an
I'm gonna
aggressive
go anger.
unfair.
I'm
Oh
gonna go
yeah.
anger,
Yep.
primal rage,
Yep.
guilt. I'm
Yep.
maybe even shame or embarrassment.
Hmm.
So there's really different emotions that lead to
Absolutely.
that. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
And so from there, if I have the lens on of it's not fair, everything's against me, it's unjust,
Hmm.
how do I experience the world?
Well, you'd be
Let's say I don't get the promotion I applied for at work.
yeah. Someone's against me.
Yeah. Let's say there's
Someone took it
no
away
available
from me.
car parks.
Oh, or someone stole your car park. Hmm.
Let's say yeah, let's say I have to be separated from my kids because I'm divorced and they
Hmm.
have to go and spend time with their dad.
Hmm.
What's my worldview? What's my perspective on that? It's not fair, and he's taking them away from me, and he doesn't deserve that, and
Yeah, and that person's doing a rubbish thing at their job, and the society needs to fix here. And and I think at the crux of it, there's nothing I can do about it. But gee, if I had an army of people, I would storm in there and right. It's not
yeah.
sort of this whole idea of I will just be the change I want to see in the world. It is
Yeah.
I will go in there and physically harm people. Now I feel as though where that would have come from, because I've experienced some seasons of this.
Yeah.
Not a very not it's not a theme in my life, and it would never stayed as a theme, but there were certain times in my life, yeah, maybe two, where that sort of came up. And when you sort of think about like what was being shown to me to sort of bubble out, it was the sense of, for me, frustration being felt as though people were slowing me down. Things weren't going the way I was expecting them to go. Very in the head, completely disconnected here. But for others, it could be that the fact that they've experienced a lot of things that they felt unfair
Mm.
during their childhood. Maybe they were a younger sibling,
Yeah,
right? And an older
totally.
sibling, I I'm the eldest of three, but with my twin sister, I'm older by 10 minutes. But it's sort of like brother and sister dynamics, or brother and sister dynamics.
Totally. And it's how these things are navigated. It's
Yep.
how these things are navigated. So with my kids, when obviously like one gets a toy or one gets a lolly or one gets something and then the other one wants it and they'll measure out their
Mm,
ice cream and the one who has the bigger one, it's like everything. They're so wide for fairness.
yeah.
It's so crazy. But I remember being like that as a child. And then it's
Mm,
how, as a parent, how do we navigate those moments? Because how we navigate that is going to condition them as to how they then show up. And it's
mm,
about going, okay, so that feels really unfair for you right now. Um, Something I'll say to my daughter, instead of making what she's feeling wrong, instead of telling her off, instead of going, stop it, I'll get down with her and I'll go, "Oh, babe, I know, I'm with you.
mm,
Sometimes I find it really hard to not have the things that I want too. Sometimes people get things and I feel really jealous.
mm.
I'm with you. You're not alone in this. I've got you."
And I've got to say, with kids, same. I've got like a 12-year-old and 8-year-old. 12 is female, Darcy. William's 8, and they always go but everything has to be equal. And I sort of say, well, if you'd like everything to be equal, we can absolutely do that if you like.
I've done this with
However,
my kids.
it's sort of like, but do you have the same interests as William? William, do you have the same interests as Darcy? Do you have the same needs?
Yeah.
Because if you want, and you can then rattle off a couple of ideas, or it's sort of like, how
Yeah.
about I give you what you need?
Yeah.
And then,
And the image that just came to my mind is like, "Oh, Lige, what are you gonna do with your 100 Barbies?"
exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then it's sort of like, but it may feel like at this moment in time, yeah, William's going to this event
Mhm.
and you're not. So right
Yeah.
now in this moment, It is, and if you only judge it on this moment, Darcy,
Yeah.
100% unfair. But if we move it to the next thing and you get people sleeping over and he doesn't, then suddenly that's 100% unfair to William. But if we take a moment, if we stretch that moment in time across both of those things,
Mhm.
are you getting what you want? Otherwise, you'd be both going to the soccer thing and you'd both be getting the people sleeping over,
Yeah.
or one of them wouldn't have been done. So, but yes, and it is because everything we talk about, it stems from childhood. Like, and then from there, it's in how we process through it. So, guys, this has been a pretty big one, and we've wanted to give a couple of examples on how we can see the projections versus the exceptions. And like Ash said, discernment, discernment, discernment.
Yeah.
When you're building
Totally.
discernment, then you got to look for patterns and themes. Yes, you're going to be a little bit more head led to lead you into yourself
Yeah,
first.
absolutely. And then asking, I guess, like, why do I see that way? What is this bringing up for me? If we take it away from focusing on what they've done or what's
Mm,
happened or what justifies it or what excuses we have, and we come back to ourselves and go, what is this bringing up for me? When this happens, what do I feel? What
mm,
emotions are there? What thoughts are attached to it? What story am I assigning to this? And,
mm.
something that's really coming to my mind is, what did you hear that I didn't say? We had an episode on that.
Ah, yeah.
So go back, review that,
That's
because
a massive projection.
what
Yeah.
what we're hearing, we clearly have ear lenses too. we've got
Mm,
we've got some, hearing aids that are skewing and distorting the very things that are coming into our awareness. So we all have these lenses, we all have these unconscious programs, we all have these patterns. And if you are really wanting to move forward in your healing journey, in your self development, in your leadership capacity, your relational capacity, this is your key. This
mm.
is your key. This is how you do it. Because as soon as you can start to understand the unprocessed emotions within you, then you get to process them and your lenses start to change. They start to come out.
Flick, flick, flick.
Oh, goosebumps. I just got a whole wave of goosebumps.
Nice.
Whew,
Nice.
powerful.
And I think we should end this episode on a high
Yes.
and we say bye bye.
See you later through
Have a
some
great week, everyone.
really great lenses. See you guys.
Bye bye.